All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the Chicago Computer Society Linux SIG group, and this is a January 2025 meeting. Uh, Tonight we're going to do something a little bit different, but one thing that I'm going to do is right now do what's some people insist upon open forum. I just call it questions, problems, observations, opinions, news, computer news that the rest of us might not know about. So I open the floor. Anybody got anything? No?
Yeah, I'll tell you something.
Go ahead, Earl, and I'm next.
Okay, boy, the world seems to Twitter about this new AI program out of China, Deep Sync, Seek, I should say,
Deep
Deep
sea.
Seek,
Yeah.
yeah. And it apparently is quite the big deal. It's open source. It's been downloaded. There's tons of YouTube videos of people installing it, both on Windows and Macs and Linux. Uh, the computer, if you're trying to get the learning module, well, you better have a heck of a personal computer. I mean, it has to be really high end. But the promise is that once things have been trained, then more or less you and I, ordinary people, can use it locally, and it will answer our questions or whatever.
Yeah.
So
There are models that are like that, and apparently this Chinese model is one of the latest.
yeah,
And also one of the most efficient.
apparently so. Now, Tesla stock went down, the video stock went down. I don't know why that should be in particular. Elon Musk has this AI program called Grok, and
Yeah.
Grok 3 is supposed to be out in a week or so.
That should be
That's
interesting.
open, huh?
That should be interesting.
Yeah, and it's open source too. So the whole point of open source is you've got the source, you've got the whole rationale. I mean, it's all been published. Anybody can use not only the code, but the ideas behind it for your own purposes.
Well, there's open source and then there's open source. There are many
Wow.
different licenses.
Yeah,
And
MIT.
what's lurking beneath all of this is you don't see the data sets that they train it on. And the data sets really mean a lot in
Oh,
AI, in
I thought you
LLM
could
training.
download 4 or 5 of them.
What are the
Just
data sets? What do you mean by that?
The training data, the
Oh,
data they actually used in training, they
Like,
don't publish summaries of just exactly what they used
like,
and how they set the filters.
Google and all their ads have been collecting information on all of us for what is it, about 2 decades now? And that's a potential data set. More than likely, it's many data sets, but
yeah.
call it one data set because it's the one provider. And that can train AIs in knowledge. And that way, when we get to play with them, it appears they know more than what we might know.
Yeah. And then Microsoft, with their version of OpenAI, used a different universe of data.
But they've
So
been
that's a
collecting,
different data set.
yeah, and that's information they've been collecting for uh, 3 decades, just about. And then you have Amazon, you got bunches of others, OpenAI itself. We don't know what they used specifically. But
Is,
this
is it more than just is it more than just published stuff? In other words, books, magazines, newspapers,
it's
encyclopedias.
anything you do on the friggin' internet, period.
Yeah.
Now,
And
some of the training is more limited, some of it is more specialized, and some of it is much more general.
some
Tim, are
people,
you
like
recording?
publishers, don't want you, my material is copyrighted. You can't use that for training purposes, but that's a legal issue.
You have
Yeah,
to
it's
both prove that it's private, and you have to prove that they have it and used it.
Yeah,
and it's still being sorted out by our courts and by other courts.
yeah. Lawyers will get rich.
Yeah, and the rest of us all get poor.
I think Elon's main objection for this Altman fellow and his open AI is that he promised it to be open source, but changed his mind and it's actually closed source.
Well, you got to remember, both people were original partners
Yeah,
in a
they,
public, and then the board ousted Altman, and then because things were not going too well, they brought back Altman, who decided to turn it from a not-for-profit public source into a private for-profit. And it's that latter part that also Musk may not have liked, because now that would mean that even Elon Musk might have to pony up money to use OpenAI's code and logic and everything else.
yeah. And so he devised Grok.
That's right. But now the $64 question is, how many of these AI are really privacy oriented, your privacy oriented? And
I would say zero.
pardon?
I would say zero.
I would bet that
Uh,
too.
there are some that are being responsibly developed, but they're in more of the open source community, and they do things out in the open. They let people know what's happening, and they try not to trample too much on other people's stuff if they don't want to.
Tim,
And
are we recording?
what did I do about 5 minutes ago?
No, are we recording a session? I didn't get the pop up saying we're recording.
That's because Tim does it a different way.
Okay, that's good.
Tim makes his own recordings, not Zoom.
Well, sometimes I use Zoom as a backup when I know I'm having problems. But if I don't think I'm having problems, then I don't.
No
I
problem.
got enough to deal with here in 4 computers to get things accomplished. At any rate,
Yeah, and the meeting announcement contains the disclaimer that the meeting will be recorded. So
I
that
understand
is
that. I just
understood to be known.
and if we're done with this topic on AI, I think Dennis said he had something.
Yeah. Um, as far as when I do my the updates on on my Linux system, when I hit put in the updates, is it updating my Zoom? Because I didn't see where I update my Zoom.
No, it does not. You have to manually do that. The easiest way to do that is open up a browser. You go out to zoom.us slash
Okay.
downloads. It recognizes that you're on Linux. You say that you're using Mint 64-bit, since there hasn't been a 32-bit in I don't know how many years. And offhand, it'll download a module into your download folder You
Okay.
bring up the equivalent of File Explorer. You double click on that icon in the download folder, and it'll talk about a GEDI package or something like that, or installer. And that,
GW,
yeah,
GW.
yeah. Sorry about that. And it'll do the automatic installation for you.
GEDI installer.
No, GDEBI. G Debbie.
Oh, gee,
Debbie as in Debian, and
okay.
G as in GTK.
So just click on the installer and it'll take care of it.
You right click on the installer and you say open with GDebbie, unless you've made that your default, which I would.
I think on mine, if I, man, I'm going back a ways. I think it automatically recognized, hey, this is a program.
Yeah, but in Mint, the normal default, is to use the software manager.
Hmm.
Yep.
So I right click and then it brings up G Getty, or I right click on
GDebbie.
G Getty
GDebbie.
Debbie. That's what I
Yeah.
right click on. G Debbie.
You right click and one of the items in the menu, in my case the top one, is GDebbie. I believe Mint has GDebbie by default. You don't need to install it.
Yes.
Just click on that as to go ahead and proceed, and that takes care
Yeah.
of it. Okay.
The reason you would like to use that installer above others is that GW will let you know throughout the process what it's doing. And if there are problems, it will tell you, you don't have this, you don't have that, you need this, you need that.
Okay.
Or it will tell you there's a conflict that cannot be resolved.
Okay.
For example, if it needs GLibrary 3.28 and you've got 3.26, there's nothing you can do.
Okay. Second question. So Tim, when
Hey,
you
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You haven't paid for the first question that we answered.
Yeah.
Where's our money?
uh we're working on it.
Yeah.
So when you install my Linux system, you created a USB stick with Linux on it. And I'm trying to clarify, is that strictly to be used for if I have a problem with the current system, I can stick the USB in and kind of fix the current one? Or can I actually take that USB stick and, for instance, put it in my, if I can boot from that from my old Samsung, my wife's old Samsung, will it actually boot up Linux on that, on another computer?
Both are true.
Okay.
Usually, you don't have it often occur where you need the USB stick after you've got a installation installed up and going. You should be doing backups to begin with on any computer, any operating system. And if something real bad goes wrong, the first thing is if you have the equivalent of a restore point, which is time shift in Linux Mint, you can restore a snapshot. The second thing would be to restore your backup if that doesn't clear up the problem. The third option, which is also what you can use that stick for on that Samsung laptop, is to install Mint on other machines if you've got multiple machines. Not everybody does. A lot of people only have one machine. A few percentage have two or more machines. I'm one of the rare exceptions that have lots and lots of machines because I do a lot of experimenting when I'm not doing a lot of research.
Okay. Can I? is it, can I actually copy that Linux system on the USB stick to another USB stick as well if I want to make extras, or no? It has to
Yes,
be
you
created.
can, but understand, and this is one of the topics tonight, anyhow. Um, they've now moved from 22, which is 22.0, to 22.1. So, what you may want to do is download between now and next month's meeting 22.1. You got to put it on the USB stick with something like Etcher. And once it's on there, that becomes your new install and backup media. It's not necessarily needed to take your Linux machine and use it in that machine. You instead can end up taking and do an update through other means. And I haven't gotten into it yet, but if 22.0 is any indication, they have some kind of a little, I shouldn't say necessarily little, but they have a module to download that'll do the upgrade for you.
And also, unlike with Windows, they don't just withdraw the old version. There are older releases available from one of the Mint web pages.
Right. And
So you can still install the older version.
that's the thing. You can install right from your stick right now to the other computer, or even another one beyond that, and still upgrade them to 22.1.
But it's let's on the Samsung, for example, on the Samsung, rather than install, can I just launch Linux from the USB stick and
Yes,
run it without installing?
yeah,
Okay.
that's called
Yep.
live. These are almost all the Linux distros, not all of them though. More than 90% are live distros. That means
Okay.
you can run them right from the USB stick, period.
Okay.
A
Okay.
non live only gives you the option to take and install it, period, from the USB stick. So
Hmm.
that's part of the difference. So you have to take that with a kind of a grain of salt.
Okay.
It also depends on, do you have access to a Windows computer?
Me?
Yes.
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I've got I've got an XP machine. I have a Samsung machine with 8 point Windows 8.1, and I do have a Windows machine with
All right.
10, original 10.
Anything that you have that can connect to the internet. I use a software program called Yummy. Yumi. There's no Linux version of it, I don't think. It can create a multi-boot USB drive, and essentially all you'll be doing is copying the ISO file to the flash drive. The software will do it for you. And then you can actually boot off of Linux and temporarily run the live version off of any computer that you plug the flash drive into.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true, Drew. Yummy has been around for quite a while. I but if you want something that'll work from Windows, Linux, and possibly other places, there's also Ventoy, which has been one of the favorites around here. I
Does Ventoy have a Linux edition?
Oh
Yes,
yes, Ventoy was invented so you could do multiple distros and multiple windows, and you could even do persistence for
yes.
each one.
And Yummy was modified so that the latest version does persistent storage also.
Yes.
But I'd
Yeah,
say,
I have a Yummy disk with each operating system has its own set of persistent space.
right.
Mhm. Yeah, And you can do that also with Ventoy.
Uh,
You're limited only by the capacity of your USB drive.
Right.
Ventoy does 2 partitions, one for its system and one for your ISOs.
Right.
And you can just plug and play, mix and match, take one out, put a new one in. Unless you've got persistence, then you have to be careful about that.
uh,
I had another question.
Not allowed. You haven't paid us for the first two.
Aren't they cheaper by the dozen?
You gotta pay for the dozen in advance.
Oh,
There is a volume discount.
He doesn't get a discount.
Okay, we'll charge him a premium.
Did
by
some
the way, Drew, you look very I don't know what the word is. Very with the glasses and that max headroom or something, kind of different.
well, it's you combining the glasses with the king, the crown. Um, I'm trying to. If I line myself up properly, I can put the crown on my head.
Being incognito.
Okay. Well, the other thing that Tim mentioned, and that was my third question was, if you look at my window here on my Linux machine, Dennis L, you'll see I have the screen that says set up the system restore utility, and it wants to know if I want to launch time shift. So
Dennis, I think your Dennis L has dropped out of the meeting.
no kidding.
one of them has.
All right, let me relaunch.
I had one drop out too, but I don't know why. So, my Linux system, and why it did, I don't know. I think that's the first time I can remember my Linux system dropping.
Oh, that's funny. It doesn't want to. It doesn't want to. Oh, here we go. Join the meeting. Let me do this.
Well, I had mine hang a little bit until it cleared out whatever caused it to crash. Then I got the cursor back and I had to re-log in and get going again.
If it's not the one you're using primarily for the meeting, I would consider rebooting.
Unless, of course, he's recording it on that one.
No, I don't do any recording.
He's not. But like I say, restarting is sometimes the fastest thing to do.
That's funny. It won't let me click the join button.
Won't let you click the what?
It
Join.
won't let me click the join button. It has a cancel, which is live, but not the join.
In your tray, have you taken Zoom and gone into exit and then restart the program?
Yeah, you have to
Wait,
you have to kill the program and then relaunch it
It's asking me.
from your
That's funny.
email.
I was in before, but now it's asking me for the passcode. Kind of interesting. It didn't the first time.
That should be in your email.
Yeah, let me put it in.
It could be, at least in your case, you might be too far out of date, and that's causing a problem. I'm all up to date on mine, so I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, 6.3.6.
At any rate, anybody got anything else as far as a problem?
And we're back.
or a question or observation, opinion, etc., etc.
Okay, I think I'm back up. Can you see me on the?
Yeah, we got.
Okay. So it says set up the system restore utility, and there's a button there that says
Well,
launch time
whoa,
shift.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Oh,
whoa. Don't launch anything.
okay.
Time shift is going to use your in-house drive unless you have an external and you say go use this drive, not the other drive.
Okay.
And if
Yeah,
the snapshot images can be fairly good size, but you only need the last two snapshots you've taken. Anything older than the two latest, you can delete them off so that that frees up space.
yeah. If you see that during an install, unless you really intended to do a snapshot during the install, tell it not to do that. It's just reminding you you need to do that.
So so this thing that says launch time shift, if I launch it, will it give me the option to save it to an external drive?
Not from the installer. The installer will use the internal drive.
Oh, so I have to.
You have to go into the preferences and tell it to use a different drive.
The preferences under time shift?
Yes.
Yeah, in timeshift preferences.
Okay, I don't see
That's
preferences.
after you got it installed.
Yeah, but if it's happening during the install process, your only option seems to be to skip it for now and then set it up later.
Yeah, because
So once it's installed,
if it doesn't have time shift on it, that would be a first because time shifts come with Mint. They created the time shift,
yeah.
and some other distros use Microsoft's Cinnamon Desktop and Time Shift in their distros.
Mint. I yeah. So yeah, you probably do have the option of putting it on a different disk. It's just from what I've read, in the installer, you have fewer options than you would if you were just running time shift.
Okay, well, I don't see any preferences here.
Okay, let's see how you do that.
It um, it opens. Well, the first thing is there was a thing in the taskbar that said you have like a notification or something, and I clicked on the one and it said, "Oh, set up the system restore utility. Linux Mint provides a system restore utility called Time Shift. You can take snapshots of the system manually or automatically, etc." And then it has two
Don't
buttons: launch
don't
Time Shift or ignore this report.
do not do automatic. I guarantee you. You'll
Yeah.
Okay, on the left side of the screen, it says System Reports, because this is a system report, System Information, and Crash Reports. But
In the upper right top corner, is there some kind of an icon you can click?
there is a little box with three bars in it, but when I click on that, all it says is Restore Ignored Reports, Quit, or About. And that's it. No other choices.
Yeah, reports is just giving you some basic system information about new upgrades or issues that are going on and so forth.
Yeah, the only other thing up there is just, the maximize, minimize buttons and the X to close it out. But the box is only quit or about or restore ignored reports.
I think the box they're talking about yeah, I think the box they're talking about you would have to start at an earlier point in the process of upgrading, uh, an earlier point in the install process. because it comes before that screen ever shows up. And you just pre-select not to do that. There are things you can check off and things you can leave checked. And that's at the very beginning of the process. So that's where they're using the 3 bars, the hamburger icon.
Dennis, you need in your time to go to YouTube,
Okay.
put in a search, time shift setup for snapshots.
Okay. I'll take a look for it. Okay.
Yeah. The setup isn't really available to you from the installer. But if you already have TimeShift installed, you could make a snapshot before running the
Time
upgrade.
shift comes in Mint.
Yeah, you can
So,
certainly run it from your existing Mint, but the installer won't run that time shift.
Oh, well, wait. Let me go to when I go to my menu, all applications,
You have time shift.
I have time shift. So you're saying
Yeah.
I should click on that one?
yes.
Before you run the installer, you would do that, and then when you run the installer, one of the first few things you have to do is set up your preferences
And
before it really
the
gets underway.
under
Okay,
your
I'll check out YouTube like Tim
Yeah,
suggested. Let me
yeah,
do that.
and
Okay.
also
Good.
that list of all or the categories, those are all items that are in your system, just like in Windows.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Mint has a good start menu, a good application launch menu.
Okay,
Okay.
anybody got anything else? Not hearing anything. I'm going to do one thing as I'll call it a teaser. Notice down here at the bottom, I have a shield with a little red dot, which means I got some updates. Okay, so I did some experimenting, and I ended up creating something, but I'm not going to give you the details. Whoop, wrong keyboard. Gosh darn, I keep doing it. Did it again. Wrong. I've got two keyboards, two mice, and I keep grabbing the wrong one. I'm too used to using the one that's directly in front of me because that's what I use most of the time. The other one's in my lap because I can't. I don't have space for two keyboards and two mice.
Oh, you know what I did to solve that problem was I bought a mini keyboard with a built-in trackpad.
Yeah, I've got those.
Mhm.
Like a Logitech K400.
How many is many, Drew?
Uh, well, it's about the width of a laptop. Uh,
Okay.
it's small enough to fit on my laptop tray, and use, in I use it in the living room on my recliner. And if you have two computers, I have two of those keyboards. I just keep them on my ottoman. Um,
Okay, what I just did was I updated everything on the system. My shield down at the bottom is now a full shield, no red dot. This is essentially what I just did by just a little bit of work.
Hmm.
Oops. Forgot you. Can you guys see what I just typed?
It's small, but yes. Well, that helps.
Oh, for those of you who don't know, there's a line when somebody is sharing their screen and you have all of the little pictures on the right-hand side. There's a line, and if you move your mouse into the right spot, you can shrink and expand the size of the shared screen.
Well, I don't see it on mine, but anyway. At any rate, you can see. Uh, Now, it used to be only the first two things would be done separately or with the ampersand, double ampersand, which a double character like the ampersands means a logical and operation. A single ampersand, I forget what that does, but it interprets it differently. There are other cases just like it in Linux. So you have to have that. Now there's also a sudo flatpak update, and the -y's will automatically say yes to anything it finds. So what I did previously, I did two letters, hit the enter key, it did the whole 9 yards. I don't have to keep typing all this stuff if I want to do it on the terminal instead of through the GUI. And I think it's actually faster, way faster. So
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to kind of bring up here. Now,
yeah.
one other thing that I think is going to be done tonight by Bob Premick is he has a application for controlling web cams under Linux.
Yeah? Do you want me to do that?
Yep.
Okay, if you can quit your share, I can
No,
show what I'm
no, no,
doing.
no. We don't allow that.
Well, that's the only way I can do my share
How come?
because Zoom is set up that way. I let me do a share and see what I can share. I can share my entire desktop and what I don't need sound or video, but let's make sure. Okay, so first thing I want to do is hide the meeting controls. Where is hide meeting controls? I'll find it. Maybe it doesn't have hide meeting controls.
Yeah, you
Floating
do
meeting
have some. They're
controls.
under more.
Yeah, it got more, but hide.
Yeah, they're down. They changed the way they look from what they used to
Yeah,
be.
I don't have it. I absolutely don't have it. But there's a red X. And let's
Under
try.
more, right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hide names,
Now
mono.
go down to the
You're right.
bottom
It
and
says
then
there.
click on the stereo.
Stereo?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That gives us,
Oh.
and otherwise you may come across as a monaural, or however you
Oh,
enunciate it.
yeah, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm
I
looking
know
for
what
Yeah,
you're
he wants
talking
to
about.
hide the floating.
You
He
have
wants to hide that floating bar.
No, you can't do it that way. What you have to do, what I did, I shuffle it off to Buffalo. Click on mute and hold down. Click on the mute, opposite side. On the opposite side,
The
opposite of
mute?
more.
Yeah.
Click
Yeah,
on that,
mute.
hold down, and slide it off to the edge, right edge. No,
Off to
no,
the,
right edge. Way off. Yeah,
yeah, that is the right edge.
yeah, right there.
Okay.
Leave it
Okay.
there. No, no,
Never mind.
just
Never
move it.
mind. That's I'll leave it there. I can grab it later. I okay. What I was going to show you is a program called GUVC View. I do not want to start up the full program, but normally it doesn't just start with these controls. It also has a preview pane. During the meeting, if I do that, I'm going to mess everything up. So in order to use the meeting controls, let me bring up I won't be able to bring up my own image and show you live what I'm doing, but that's okay. You can do a controls only version of it. Just to review, what GUVC View allows you to do is control things like brightness, contrast, saturation, different things that your camera may or may not support. And I I usually like to be able to do various kinds of adjustments. I and those include being able to frame my face by doing a camera zoom, which is down here. And I can set that up. And when I see my own image, I can actually make finer adjustments. If I had the preview pane for GUVC View, I would not be able to make adjustments on the fly in Zoom. The reason for that is, and I'm going to unshare for now.
You're muted.
I'm muted, I know. Am I unmuted now? When I
Yeah.
dragged, I'm muted. When I dragged, I'm muted. Okay, in Linux, it's not like Windows, which has a built-in so-called loopback or virtual camera. There is a driver for that in Windows. In Linux, it's not native to the kernel. So you would have to take the loopback driver, download it from a site like Webcamoid, and you would have to recompile the Linux kernel. I'm not going to do that just to adjust my appearance. So what I showed you were the control was in the control only mode. Now I'm going to do another share because I'm going to show you how you create on your menu, on your applications menu, a control only mode launcher for uh, for a program such as GUVC View. So let me share everything again. And I'm going to show you my menu. Now in my menu, I'm going to go into, it isn't under, you might expect it maybe to be under graphics or internet, but it's not. It installs under sound and video. And normally what you've got is this guy. Let's get his properties. This is a launcher, and you can create new ones. But you'd have to put the menu into, let me cancel this out for now. You would have to put your menu into, why am I not able to do anything now? There we are. You would have to put your menu into edit mode. I'll just show you the edit mode, and that allows you to do things like add a new item, get the properties of the item. Let's go and get the properties of GUVC. And it has a different name here. This is the actual full name. And I'm going to show the properties again. This is the entire launcher. This is an icon which comes with GUVC View. But if you make a new launcher, you'll have to find that icon. This is generated from the GUVC view binary, and you wouldn't be able to extract it easily. So I downloaded one and put it in my home applications. I made a folder called applications, and this is the icon that I reference when I create a new launcher. So let me see if I can. I'm trying to grab this guy to do that. Okay, now let's get you guys over here.
You muted yourself again.
There. Better? You'll note what the command is. For GUVC view in the line of the launcher, command. It's just the GUVC view, which if you type it into the terminal, it will launch GUVC view. So I'm going to go into. I created one, and so I made a new. I added this, the icon, and I wrote all this out, and I wrote out a comment about what it does. Webcam controls with no preview pane. And this is the command. I found online a description of what you need to do. There are two different ways of writing it, typing it into the terminal, but -Z is the easiest. And I tried it first in the terminal, and it worked. So then I made this launcher, and it works. And so that's how I got to the point where I can just from my menu, I can do GUVC view controls just like that. And I think I have 2 copies of it, so I'll just take care of one, and there's the other. Okay, so let me stop the share. So there we are. I did it. I got it. So that's how I do it. There are other programs that I use in Windows. SplitCam is a free program that can be used, and in Windows I also put the virtual webcam driver in. The advantage of having a loopback is the video stream can be shared. All right, Drew does have things to say, I know, but the video stream can be shared, and it can be shared among different applications, more than one application at a time. I don't think you can do that in Linux without the loopback driver. So that's what I got. Anybody else got something on this or related?
I have that program, but it must run alone. That is to say, if I'm on Zoom like this, that program refuses to run.
This would happen only if you have GUVC view with the preview pane. That cannot be shared because then GUVC view grabs the video stream and it won't let it go. But the controls only has the beauty that even during this meeting, I have it up now and I can change my appearance on the fly live. Let me find something where I can show what I'm doing. I can move myself around. I'm using the controls of GUVC view, but with no preview pane. And that's why the -Z parameter. I can move down and up, and I can do other things. I can let me zoom in and out on this. I can make myself smaller or larger.
How much camera, the quality of the the camera can be impacted by what you can do here.
A virtual webcam can do wonders for improving a low resolution camera image or video stream. It's easier to have high definition to begin with because then you have more data to work with. If you try to upgrade a low quality image, you can get artifacts and you can get pixelation and things don't look right. But right now, I have a rather high quality webcam. I used to have a much lesser quality of webcam, and I was able to upgrade the image considerably. I could clean it up a lot, especially for sharpness and detail. So, anything else?
Well, when I looked at the video tab there on that program, what I thought was interesting, you changed the codec. Uh, Motion JPEG 1 a second if you're doing surveillance, for example.
Yeah.
If you were recording, that should be a huge compression.
There are many things you can do with it that I haven't even looked into. And another thing you can do is change the source so you can switch from one cam to another.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the website you got that from, Bob?
GUVC View, I will call it up in my browser so I can copy it.
Bob, are the settings sticky?
They last through a session, and you can save profiles and then call them up again. So, yes, you can create a profile, save it somewhere, and then call it up anytime, and it'll bring the settings right to where that profile is. It'll be just as though you had continued the session. What I wanted to get about this is that you get this from SourceForge. And I will put in chat exactly where. There we are. That's the website.
Can you put like you've got GUC view-Z.
Yeah.
Can you put something like that in startup to have it automatically go into new settings?
To automatically pick up the settings, you could create a startup item. But it's really just as simple. Before I ever start up Zoom, I go to GUVC View, and I select a profile and call it up. Then when I call up Zoom, it'll pick up that profile. And if I want to make further adjustments on the fly, as long as it's in controls only mode, I just call up GUVC View whenever I want.
Okay.
So I can tweak, I can call up new profiles. The only thing I can't do on the fly with GUVC View is switch cameras. Not in the controls only mode.
So as long as you only have one camera, you're good.
Yeah, if you have multiple cameras, you may want something more sophisticated. In Windows, I would be able to do with their programs different cameras, and I would be able to do them on the fly. But that's because they have that loopback that Linux doesn't have.
Godzilla returned.
So, anybody else got anything on that or something similar that they use?
How much was that, Bob, or is that freeware?
It's a free one. The reason I didn't use Webcamoid is that they now charge for each download. It's not a lot of money, but they charge. And SplitCam doesn't have a Linux version.
Yeah, we lost Earl. I noticed that. seems like we're having a little problem with people suddenly dropping out a lot.
Yeah,
I had that.
I never had that happen before, and I've dropped out twice already
Yeah, and I've
on the Linux.
dropped out
Not
once,
on the
and
Chromebook, but on the Linux.
now Earl's dropped out.
It's a mainland thing because the last 2 times I haven't dropped out at all, and I used to be the one that did it.
Yeah. I had some issues a couple of weeks back.
I have no idea what's going on.
But since that time, I took my modem and I reset it. I made it drop its old stale IP address.
Okay, do we have anything else to discuss with Bob's presentation?
Anything else on webcams and how you guys might manage them?
Well, maybe somebody will think of something for next month.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna then start sharing my screen for reasons I have no idea. Wait a minute. Okay, it's that one. Had to figure out which one it was. Okay. Now, maximize that. I have a lot of videos. We'll never get through all of them, and I don't anticipate doing that or even trying to do that.
The all-new Linux Mint 22.1 is here and it's absolutely packed with new things. We are getting our first look at Cinnamon 6.4, which brings a completely revamped design language to Linux Mint. But this release is not just about the looks. Linux Mint developers are giving us many new features to kick off the new year. We are finally getting power modes. These let us apply some powerful performance optimizations. Then we are introduced to the Nightlight feature, which was a top fan request. We'll also explore some major under the hood upgrades that make this release better than ever before. Linux Mint has completely rewired its package management. You don't want to miss that. Linux Mint 22.1 is refining and redefining what a modern desktop Linux experience should be. This is a huge update from one of the biggest names in the Linux world. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Cinnamon Desktop is probably the most loved thing about Linux Mint, and it is bumped up to version 6.4 with this release. And this version is bringing some really cool things. First of all, there's a completely revamped look and feel thanks to the new default theme. This new theme brings a modern touch to the Cinnamon Desktop. I really love what they've done here. Take a look at this. Now, we get slightly rounded elements instead of sharp square ones, like everywhere. Let me show you a side-by-side comparison. You can see the menu selector, and in the calendar, buttons, all the elements have a slight border radius. This smoothing up of borders gives the whole desktop a modern, polished vibe. Linux Mint developers have also played around with the color palette and they have updated the theme to have more contrast. The theming now leans into darker shades. I feel this is a good thing, as I've always felt that Mint can look bland at times. Compared to other modern distros, the colors on Mint don't pop at all. I know this was by design, but still. But with this update, Mint leans into those darker darks and it looks very good here. It's modern and it makes the desktop look more punchy. It's also more practical as it makes the text, icons and other elements stand out. I really appreciate these improvements that Linux Mint developers bring out with every new Cinnamon. These changes are not so huge as to catch your attention or distract you, but at the same time, we are not left using an outdated UI. I am getting adjusted to using Mint this way, but I absolutely love the new Cinnamon look. Linux Mint 22.1 is bringing an exciting feature back that I personally adored: Nightlight. Linux Mint veterans might remember this cool feature that we had called Redshift. Basically, what it did was, it reduced blue light emission from your screen and made the screen warmer or orangey. Now this objectively makes your screen more pleasant to look at. It feels less harsh on your eyes. And it also massively helps in improving your sleep quality. And it could also be tied to sunset times so that your screen turns warm once the sun sets. But unfortunately, the Redshift app had to be dropped from Linux Mint because Mozilla location service that it used was discontinued and it broke Redshift. While you could employ workarounds, they were not that convenient. So Linux Mint developers have created their own solution. Nightlight directly integrates into the Cinnamon desktop environment and also gives you complete control over how you want to use it. You can set the desired temperature, you can also schedule it based on your preferred timings or based on the sunset timing in your location, and this works when using X11 as well as the Valent display server. Just search for Nightlight in the menu or the settings and turn it on. Play around with the temperature settings to get the tone that you resonate with. By the way, if you haven't already, check out my course Linux Mastery Express. I've designed this course to level up your Linux skills very quickly. With this course, you'll get so comfortable using the terminal commands that your friends will think you're a Linux wizard. You'll get perfect with the most used, most useful commands and also learn advanced things like using the V-editor and shell scripting as well. Linux Mastery Express, link in the description, do check it out. Linux Mint 22.1 introduces full native dialogues, and from a technical point of view, this is a big deal. Let me give you some background info here. Previously, Linux Mint used PolicyKit GNOME to display dialog boxes for system shutdown confirmation, application terminations, network connections, and other confirmation dialogues. While these worked, they did have compatibility issues under Valent. And since Valent seems to be the future, it made sense for Linux Mint developers to get a handle on this once and for all. So they have chosen to completely rewrite these dialog boxes using Clutter, the same tech that powers the beautiful panels in this desktop. These new dialogues fit in perfectly with the new snazzy rounded corner aesthetics introduced in Cinnamon 6.4. Let me show you a comparison. The new ones are definitely an upgrade as far as looks are concerned. This transition also addresses the compatibility issues that were previously encountered on Valent display server and dialogues with elevated privileges. These new dialogues are going to make the whole thing feel more unified and put together. With the 22.1 update, the developers have made a game-changing update under the hood. For years, Linux Mint relied on tools like AppDaemon, GDevi, and Apt2RL. Now these are solid tools that serve their purpose well, but were showing serious signs of aging. These tools were built over a decade ago and unfortunately haven't kept up with modern development practices. They had created bottlenecks and frankly headaches for both users and developers. In a bold move to modernize package management, AppKit and Captain are brought in to replace their older counterparts. While this change may not be apparent to the users, it is a huge change nonetheless, as it reduces clutter, streamlines package management operations, and makes the whole thing more intuitive. As I said, the older tools I mentioned were developed a decade ago and were not being maintained upstream. This reliance on outdated yet significantly core components of the operating system can be a really bad thing. It's a huge headache for developers. They have to deal with unnecessary bugs and paper cuts when the same time could be used for more productive tasks. So Linux Mint developers have laid that foundation, ensuring a smoother future for package management. Now, let's dive into one of the most exciting features that Linux Mint 22.1 brings, the new power modes. I've always felt that Linux Mint is one of the best operating systems in the performance delivery and power management department. I've always gotten a great battery life out of it, and when I needed high performance, Linux Mint seamlessly delivered it. But with the new power modes, Mint is giving us that flexibility to optimize the system's performance and energy use according to our needs. Jump to the power management section in the system settings and we get 3 power modes: Power Saver, Balanced, and Performance. If you need to conserve battery life and squeeze in more minutes when you're working on your laptop, just switch to the power saving mode. If you're doing something more demanding like video editing or gaming, the performance mode will give you that extra boost. For everyday tasks, just stick your computer in the balanced mode and it's all going to work perfectly. You can also change these modes directly from the power applet on laptops. So yeah, these new power modes are going to let you fine-tune your system's performance and battery life to suit the kind of work you're doing at any given time. It's all about that flexibility. This lets your computer adapt to your needs, whether you're working, gaming, or just browsing around. We already had this feature in Linux distros running the GNOME desktop environment. It's phenomenal to see this neat little feature debut in my favorite Linux distro. Every new version of Linux Mint comes with a refreshing set of new and colorful wallpapers. These wallpapers were earlier organized under folders codenamed for each release. This release too brings new artwork, but instead of a release-based folder structure in the Wallpapers app, they have chosen to go with a theme-based folder, starting with a broader Wallpapers folder in this release. You see some familiar as well as some new entries here this time. In the future editions of Linux Mint, they will add more folders based on themes. We'll most probably see entries like nature, sky, water, city, etc. This change may seem trivial initially, but it's definitely going to make customization more convenient on Mint. I like this change, but we'll have to wait till more folders are populated here. In addition to all these updates, there have been many big and small touch-ups to many core components of Linux Mint. The software manager has been optimized. It is now more responsive when browsing and installing applications. The file manager has been polished around some rough edges. Linux Mint 22.1 is based on Ubuntu 24.0 for LTS and is powered by the Linux kernel 6.8. This will receive support till 2029. Alright, there you have it guys. Our first look at the upcoming Linux Mint 22.1 and everything new it's bringing. We will do a detailed deep dive once it's released, but for now, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. Also leave me a big thumbs up and talk to me in the comments below. And
Okay. Any comments? Sounds like it's pretty good. I'll see if I can get mine upgraded before the next meeting. That depends on time.
Linux Mint 22.1 was released today, and it is a bigger release than I expected. But what's most interesting in here is that Mint is really trying to revive and to rework and rebuild a working, stable, redesigned ecosystem around Debian packages, where every other distro is either trying to go immutable, working on snaps, or on flatpaks. So we're gonna take a look at everything new inside of Mint, and it's a good version, and we're also gonna take a look at our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Proton VPN. You probably already know about Proton Mail, one of the most secure and private email services. Or the visual, graphical changes to the desktop and to the baked-in apps. So Mint 22.1 comes with Cinnamon 6.4. It's not an enormous update, but it does come with a few things. First, there's a new default Cinnamon theme. It's not the Mint Y theme that's been updated, it's the default Cinnamon one. And this is what other distributions that are not Mint tend to ship by default. So Ubuntu Cinnamon, Fedora Cinnamon, Arch, and others get a new default theme for Cinnamon, which is definitely a lot better. You've got better rounded corners, you've got a nicer looking black or at least dark background, you've got a bit more padding. It just looks a little bit nicer all around. Now, speaking of themes, the Mint Y theme also received a few changes here and there with a few more rounded corners, but honestly, you'll be hard-pressed to notice the difference. It still looks exactly like you're used to, honestly, in day-to-day use. Now, you also have the usual new entries in the wallpapers, but like, okay, maybe someone cares about this, but it's not like it's a major change. Now, visually, you'll also notice that the authentication dialogues and a bunch of others have received changes all across the desktop. So you now have the same similar GNOME style of things with split buttons. They are no longer stuck at the bottom. They probably just rebased this out of what GNOME did in Mutter and in the GNOME shell, since Cinnamon still uses some code from the GNOME shell. You'll see these dialogues pop up when you try and change the resolution of your desktop, for example. You'll see those when you're trying to authenticate and other things like that. This is a change that comes to Cinnamon and also to Linux Mint. It goes to everyone using Cinnamon, and I think it's good. Like, it looks a bit nicer than the previous version. Now, the on-screen display elements like the Sound OSD have been redesigned as well to be a bit less invasive on your screen. They all look a bit nicer. Now, Cinnamon also gained a new feature called Nightlight. You used to be able to do this in Linux Mint with Redshift, which was a third-party utility, but it didn't really work anymore because it was based on an unmaintained library, and it also did not support Wayland. So now, straight from Cinnamon settings, you've got Nightlight. You can select the color temperature, you can preview what it does, and you can specify start and end times, or have an automatic schedule based on your time zone and the time and date. So it automatically starts when the sun starts to set, and it automatically lifts when the sun. Linux Mint also now has power modes called Power Saver, Balanced, or Performance if you have a dedicated GPU. This did not exist previously in Mint. It's kind of surprising. I was sure they had that before, but apparently they didn't. And so now you're going to be able to change those power modes. Now do note that this change only comes to Cinnamon. Graphically, you can use these power modes on the XFC or the Mate variant of Linux Mint, but you will need to use the command line to trigger them because, well, these systems just don't apparently have the graphical option to switch power modes or don't have the applets necessary. In Mint, you can change these settings from the main system settings or from the power applet that shows your battery if you're on a laptop, for example. You also have a few other changes. For example, you can now decide to display notifications over full screen windows when previously these would be hidden behind those windows. You can set that or not if you prefer. Nemo will now let you automatically expand rows when you're trying to drag and drop to the tree view, or you can disable that if you really do not want to expand your tree view every time you try to drag something inside of another folder. So you now have one more option to control that. Now in the global window list, which is basically just the task manager that is slotted inside of the main panel of Cinnamon and Linux Mint, you can now choose if you want to display the windows from all monitors or only from the monitors that do not have a window list. Now, if you want sound to go higher than 100%, you now can in a more easy fashion. You can just click the overamplification button and now you have access to more than 100%. And if you disable that, you keep obviously the volume level that you had set previously. This is a bit nicer than what used to exist in Cinnamon. Now the Alt tab settings also were changed a little bit. They look a bit simpler, and also the minimized windows are now placed at the end of the task list. So if I minimize here the file manager, it will be placed automatically at the end, even though it wasn't previously. That's about it for those changes. On the lock screen, you can now display the password that you're trying to type. This apparently wasn't a thing before. I think it's always nice to have that option just to check that you haven't mistyped something. If you have very complex password with very weird symbols, then obviously being able to check if that works or not is interesting. Finally, the bulk renaming tool now lets you remove accents from the file name. So if you're not a French person like me and you don't have accents in all the words that you're trying to type, then you can just make sure that all of these go away and you don't have any encoding problems anywhere. That's just a little quality of life improvement here. So as you've seen, obviously these changes to the Cinnamon desktop and to the Linux Mint experience will really not change anything on how you actually use your desktop. Bit of quality of life improvements. Mostly it's for other distros that ship Cinnamon, so it looks a little bit better for them. That's probably something that was requested a lot, but generally you did not have a lot to add to the Mint experience. It's already pretty feature complete, and if you add a lot more stuff, then you basically make a GTK based KDE, which would not really be that interesting. The second big thing I want to talk about, which is also the title of the video basically, is Mint's focus on deb packages. You probably know that Mint focuses a lot on Debian packages. They're probably the last distro that really does that apart from Debian. They do support FlatHub and Flatpaks out of the box, but generally what they try to encourage is using Debian packages. They actually repackage a lot of software as debs, even though they use Ubuntu as a base, and Ubuntu replaces a lot of stuff with snaps. Now the issue with relying on Debian packages is that the entire software infrastructure around apt itself is pretty old and pretty crummy. It tends to not really be maintained. The apt package manager is obviously well maintained, but the libraries around it that let you interact with the package cache, that let you install files when you're not root, stuff like that, it's not that well maintained. And the graphical tools around that, like the Synaptic Package Manager, for example, or the gdebi package installer, are also pretty much abandoned upstream. They receive patches from Ubuntu, from Debian, from Mint, but basically the architecture itself is set in stone and no one will ever work on them fully ever again. And that's why Mint decided to work on their own apt-based tools to make sure that installing Debian packages, performing in-place upgrades and things like that would still work properly and would be a bit easier to handle on their own. So Mint built AppKit, which is a library that lets a non-root user refresh the package cache, install packages, remove packages, perform updates, basically all the basic tasks that you would expect and that graphical programs can call to. And they also built Captain, which is a brand new graphical package installer for Linux Mint, which lets you do what gdebi does. Basically, it's the exact same thing, but it lets you install this with a modern application that's been redesigned from the ground up. It's very simple. It just handles downloaded deb packages or links that start with apt:// which are basically the apt URL links that Ubuntu created and introduced. It just does that, so it's not adding any extra features, but it does let you do that in a modern fashion without relying on old tools like gdebi, which are no longer really maintained. So what are the benefits? Well, currently there are none that you can really see, but in the future it will mean you have a much nicer time when trying to install packages that might require certain weird dependencies, when you're trying to update your system or upgrade it in place, when you're trying to update or download extra packages that you installed manually. You will get better translations, you'll get faster speeds across the entire app ecosystem around installing and updating your system. And in terms of dev work, it also means that Mint will have a much better time trying to implement improvements and fixes around apt-based tools and Debian packages. So it's a lot of background work which you will probably never see apart from the software manager, which is actually really faster and nicely multi-threaded and works properly when installing multiple things. It's a good piece of software now. But generally what it means is that Mint is trying to keep the deb package system alive. And that's really cool because every other distro is trying to basically move away from debs for everything apart from their distro base or from RPMs because they're trying to introduce immutable distros, snaps, or work on flatpaks. Having that third way still available and relying on modern tools is cool. I do hope that Debian also takes a look at these tools and maybe starts using them and contributing to them instead of relying on the older ones, but we'll see how it goes. Now let's move on to the Wayland session. It is still completely experimental on Mint 22.1. They haven't changed anything around this, but they did improve things a lot. Namely, you can now do everything that requires admin permissions. If you tried the Wayland session before, chances are you noticed that it wasn't really usable because when you tried installing something, updating something, or removing something, you never saw any authentication pop-ups, meaning you could just not do it. Now this is solved in this version of Mint, which is nice because it means the Wayland session is actually usable now. It works for installing packages, removing packages, or performing updates, but it also works with changing certain settings that are admin locked, like for example the firewall or things like that. It also works with every app that requires admin preferences. So if we look at Timeshift, this also requires you to type an admin password, and it works under Wayland now, which is really nice. And you also obviously now have the nightlight feature, which did not exist or work properly on Wayland before, and now obviously it does. Obviously, it is still an experimental Wayland session, meaning you will find bugs here and there are probably some missing parts, and things will not work properly all the time. They don't plan on making this the default session or the main focus before Ubuntu 26.04 releases, the next LTS, so in more than a year, so they still have a lot of time to finalize how their Wayland session works, but right now at least it should be very usable with every standard basic feature you'd expect working, but I would expect things based on X Wayland and maybe handling of dedicated GPUs and multi-monitor being a bit more broken than on other desktops that really have been working on Wayland for much longer. So in the end, Mint 22.1 is a bigger release than I expected, and it is very, very cool to see the Debian-based, package-based ecosystem improve still. I personally prefer Flatpaks for graphical applications. This is now my main installation method of choice on any distro that I use because I find that generally these applications work better than any package ones. They're more up to date. It's easier to install extensions or plugins if you need that. I like them. But the base of a system is still mostly package-based. A lot of distributions are trying to replace that, but even if you build an image-based system, you're still building your image out of packages. And so all the tools around those packages should be improved and should be worked on. Even if it's just external graphical tools, those things still need to exist. And Mint doing that work makes total sense. They're one of the last bastions of Debian packages. They're the ones doing the repackaging of every app that Ubuntu is trying to ditch into snaps. It makes sense, and it's nice to have some newer graphical tools and some newer underlying libraries to work with all of this. Now, in terms of the Cinnamon desktop, there's not a lot new here. If you're not using Linux Mint and you're a Cinnamon-based distro, then chances are you'll be happy to have a new solid theme, even though it probably was relatively easy to install the Minty or Mint Y theme that Mint ships instead of the default one. But also you get a bunch more options. It's not like you're gonna be able to add a lot more without turning Cinnamon into KDE, and with that you're gonna get a lot of problems because the more options you have, the more configurations you have, the more problems you tend to have as well. In general, it's a solid upgrade. Just like every Mint upgrade, it's not going to change how you use your desktop, but it's also probably not what Mint users really expect or want out of Linux Mint. It's improvements all around, and Mint isn't the fastest distro, it's not the best looking distro, it's not the lightest distro, it's the most competent on all areas. It provides all the options that most people need, it provides all the graphical tools that most users need, it provides a very simple, stable experience, even though it can be very up to date now with the default kernels being updated way more often, and with Flatpaks and FlatHub. It's just probably the best distro all across all the different points that are important for a desktop operating system. So it's still the one I recommend to every newcomer and everyone who just wants a no headache, no problems experience. You just download it, you install it, it runs, it won't blow your mind or anything, but it just works and is still, in my opinion, the best recommendation you could give to anyone who wants to dive into Linux. And if you want to dive into Linux with a new computer, check out our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux out of the box. It's actually pre-installed. And they do a lot of work as open source for handling all the drivers and all the... Now, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Plenty of cool YouTube buttons that you can click to make the video.
I can see a lot of internet problems, and the funny thing is, it must be Zoom, because I can see my other screen with my peripheral vision, and when the main screen here freezes up the image, it's still going good on the Linux box. So it's got to be Zoom that's having some problems.
Now that 2024 is behind us, I thought it could be interesting to take a look at the big major moves that we've seen on the Linux and open source front over the past year, because there was a lot of stuff happening and a lot of things changed mostly for the better. I also think 2025 will see those trends continue and the Linux and open source ecosystem get even better, with one notable exception. So let's talk about this, and let's talk about our sponsor. This video is sponsored by TuxCare. They are your all-in-one provider of solutions for securing and automating your server and workstation fleet on Linux. They offer check it out. So, our first main big thing will be about the Linux desktop as a whole. Linux started the year at under 4%, 3.77%, and over the course of 2024, it fluctuated, but it really cemented its position at around 4%, including finishing the entire year at 4.13 after it reached a maximum a little bit earlier in the year. This market share looks like it is here to stay. The Steam Deck definitely helped, but it's not just the Steam Deck. It couldn't be, because SteamOS only represents 2% of the gaming market share. So something is pushing Linux much, much higher than just the Steam Deck. And it looks like it might be India. In the Indian market, Linux represents 13.15% of the desktop market share, and it just lowered at the end of 2024, but it used to be even a little bit higher. Now, don't get me wrong, a 4.1% market share for the desktop operating system market is still very, very low, but it's not insignificant. It is not small. It is a huge number of users that can be targeted by game developers, software developers, and anybody who has anything to sell, basically, meaning our platform can start being targeted by interesting stuff, but also by less interesting stuff like more malware geared towards the desktop. And we also have some good opportunities coming in 2025, notably Windows 11. This is a reviled operating system by a lot of people. They see the death of Windows 10, the last known solid version of Windows. They see the brute forcing of AI features, of Copilot, and even actual spyware in the form of recall as horrible things being forced onto them and that they don't want. Windows has also become completely unreliable. Every single update that Microsoft pushes makes headlines for how many systems it had broken and how many features are now not working properly. Windows is a mess. It is not tested enough. It is focusing on everything that people don't want to see, and this is the biggest opportunity for Linux, as always. Now, the second major thing that happened in 2024 is funding for a lot of our projects, and this went through one specific organism called the Sovereign Tech Fund. They are not the only ones who funded major open source projects. We've seen Valve invest a lot in contributions in terms of the Mesa drivers, but also in other parts of the Linux ecosystem like Arch. But really, the Sovereign Tech Foundation did a lot of the work here. They are a German organization. They're funded by the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. I think their budget for 2024 was 13 million euros, and their goal is to secure and promote open source technology so the entire open source ecosystem is more resilient against attacks. It's basically one of these digital sovereignty and software independence sort of programs that Germany is pushing and that we're seeing all across Europe, although only the German one seems to really invest that money into well-known open source projects. Other countries talk a lot about digital sovereignty, but they don't necessarily do much to try and achieve it. As a bunch of examples, the Sovereign Tech Fund gave 1 million euros to the GNOME project for some GNOME-specific stuff like variable refresh rate, but also a lot of cross-desktop stuff. We've seen FreeBSD get 686,000 euros. We've seen Arch Linux get about 560,000 euros to work on their package management and infrastructure. OpenStreetMaps got 384,000 euros to improve their infrastructure, their code quality, their documentation, and a lot of other projects also got some money like PHP, Samba, FFmpeg, systemd, and a lot more. And this all points to Germany maybe trying to build a better software ecosystem that they would rely upon. And hopefully, with pressure from citizens, and we've seen some petitions talking about maybe building a European Union operating system, which would be Linux-based, maybe with all of this, we're gonna see the emergence of a strong Linux OS that is backed by governments and countries that are putting actual money into it to use it themselves. Maybe we're seeing the early beginnings of that kind of push, which would be very cool, but also, do we want a government-controlled operating system? I'm not entirely sure about that. Now, of course, 2024 was maybe not the year of the Linux desktop, but at least the year of Wayland. Plasma 6 emerged with the first really finalized Wayland session for KDE. 5.27 was already really solid in terms of Wayland. GNOME is so well finished on GNOME is pretty much done with Wayland as well. They're even pondering disabling access to the X11 session by default, although of course distros will be able to rectify that and put X11 back in the list of sessions that are available. Fedora is probably going to move to Wayland only, just like Red Hat is. Elementary OS has their own Wayland session. Linux Mint and Cinnamon have their experimental Wayland session. Budgie announced that their next release, 10.10, will be Wayland only. Cosmic will be Wayland only. Wine has a Wayland driver now, and virtually every piece of software is moving towards supporting Wayland, including Discord, even though their implementation is still shaky and they disabled it recently in their betas because they have other bugs that they need to deal with. And if you're wondering why Wayland would be a big thing for 2024, well, it's because we finally have a unified, secure, stable, modern platform to actually display Windows, use multiple monitors, handle fractional scaling, HDR, per monitor refresh rates, all of those things that just did not work properly on X.org because it was never designed for that. So Wayland was a big thing in 2024, if only because the transition is finally complete. Only Mate really remains without a Wayland session. Even XFCE has one now. So yeah, basically at the end of 2025, all these sessions are finalized and we can finally move on to more interesting things. Now, gaming is an area where not much progress was seen. The market share grew a bit, but we're still at around 2% and it's still very low. We are still in a pretty bad situation when it comes to anti-cheat and game support. Most single-player games just run perfectly on Linux, sometimes with better performance than on Windows, but multiplayer stuff, depending on which anti-cheat solution they decided to go with, they're just a pain. They're probably, arguably, the worst situation we've seen on Linux gaming. I think things have gone downhill since the introduction of the Steam Deck and the first partnerships with Valve and Easy Anti-Cheat and BattleEye and things like that. I think we reached a new low in terms of how badly supported our platform is with these tools. Don't get me wrong, these tools have Linux support, but not a lot of developers enable that support because enabling Linux support means opening up cheating opportunities for people on Windows, or since the anti-cheat is less effective on Linux than on other platforms, cheaters just move to Linux so they can cheat more. None of the big games came over to Linux or support Linux like Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Rust, and others. And out of the website, are we anti-cheat yet? Only 1% of the games that use anti-cheat are supported officially, and 20% run without guarantee that it will work later. 59% are broken, and 4% even said that they just won't support it. So we have more developers, or at least more listed games, where their developers said that they don't want to support Linux, they actively don't support it. Now, there are some interesting avenues for gaming in 2025. We've got the Lenovo Legion Go S, which will ship with SteamOS. They will have a SteamOS variant, which is nice. We know there won't be a Steam Deck 2 this year, but we might see some hardware from Valve, notably on the VR side of things. We're also going to see a Steam Controller 2 coming up. We are going to see third-party handhelds shipping with SteamOS. It could increase SteamOS's market share or Linux market share, and the awareness that this platform is actually a really solid one that people like using, and so maybe developers will come to terms with that, or maybe solutions will be worked on so anti-cheat can work as well on Linux and SteamOS as it does on other operating systems. We've also seen some big stuff happening on open source drivers in 2024. They are now no longer an afterthought from manufacturers, and these drivers are everywhere. AMD drivers as a whole improved a lot with better handling of hybrid CPUs with efficiency cores and performance cores, better schedulers, and generally just lower energy consumption for better performance on all recent and modern AMD devices. No longer do you have the worst support on day one when a brand new AMD GPU releases. You now have really solid drivers. The only limiting factor is whether your distro has a recent enough Mesa version that includes those drivers or not. Intel has also shown way more dedication for graphics drivers, but also for their CPU drivers with the same kind of better hybrid support, but also the new Xe graphics driver and Xe2 support. Nvidia also moved to open source modules by default this year, even though most of the actual code is in the firmware, and that firmware is still very much proprietary. But the loader for the firmware is open source now for recent GPUs, and that's pretty cool. We also have new open source drivers for NVIDIA with NVK and Nuvo, and a new effort from Red Hat called Nova, which aims at replacing Nuvo. So in 2024, open source drivers made leaps and strides and progressed so much, at least for the important stuff like the CPU and the GPU. I'm not saying all drivers became better all of a sudden. We still don't have many fingerprint readers supported. We still have issues with external third-party peripherals of certain types. But generally, the base system is now extremely well optimized. We're seeing contributions from most major players. That's probably mostly because AI runs on Linux and no one wants to miss the AI train, but it still lifts all boats, so I'm not going to complain. Now, the area that really did not get any better in 2024 was packaging formats. It did not bring anything new, and it might actually have regressed. Arch received some funds from Valve and the STF to improve their package management tools and their infrastructure, which is nice, but everything else stagnated. Snaps are not as bad as they once were. They gained an experimental permission system, but they're still probably the slowest out of all packaging formats. They still clutter your mount points. Improving one snap doesn't always improve all snaps. You have to do changes and incremental improvements to every single snap out there to optimize them. They still rely on a proprietary store handled by Canonical. They're still not a very interesting format for most people. Flatpaks did not evolve all that much either. While adoption seems to grow with more official apps than ever before on FlatHub, it's still not the default method that most distros rely upon. It still uses a bit more space, it still cannot work for every type of application, and creating a Flatpak package still seems to be relatively difficult for developers. Distro packages did not fix any of their issues, namely security, because you install a package and all of its install scripts as root, so the package can do anything if there's a malicious script in there. Third-party maintainers are building these packages, meaning that you have to trust every single person who built every single package. They can also decide to be opinionated on which features they include or not. See KeePass and Debian, where you lost some features because the maintainer thinks this shouldn't exist. Dependency problems still are everywhere. Package versioning hell is still there. In-place updates can still break your system. Distro packages just did not get better. App images are still based on an insecure Fuse library, and they're still mostly an afterthought only used by third-party packagers and a few very niche Linux actors. So yeah, packaging formats were still a mess in 2024, they will still be a mess in 2025, because it's basically a cold war of packaging formats. Everyone is doing their stuff in their own corner. App developers really don't have a default choice. They are not building distro packages because no one wants to deal with one package for every single distro, for every single release of that distro that is still supported. No one's doing that. That's why distros package software themselves. It's not because it's a better way of doing things, it's because they have no choice if they want to have software. Flatpaks are still not perfect, snaps are still not that great, app images are just an afterthought, so developers still don't have an easy solution to make apps for Linux, and that's a problem because it means we don't get as many apps on Linux as we should get, or we get Electron stuff, which, yeah, nice. Anyway, 2024 was a very good year for Linux and open source. We secured a lot of funding for critical projects, thanks Germany, but they're not the only ones. We have the backing of Valve, a pretty big company. Even Nvidia is starting to see the light and is working on their Linux stuff, mostly because of AI, but they're still doing it. And generally, all of our desktops have gotten better. We have better subsystems, we have a better graphical stack with Wayland, we have better desktop environments as well, and better window managers and compositors. If you use tiling window managers as well, they got much better in 2024. So generally, our experience has never been as good, and there are signs that things will keep improving in 2025. With the Wayland transition finally behind us for most big-name desktops, so let's reconvene in early 2026 and take a look at whether things did get better in 2025 or if they ended up going way worse than what I thought they did. Anyway, what's not gonna get worse is the segue to our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux.
Okay, let's get that one. Time is getting late. And I want to get to a certain one.
We are diving into the top 18 essential things that you must do after installing the brand new Linux Mint 22. Oh, we are going to supercharge your Linux Mint experience. Forget the usual change your wallpaper advice. I'm talking about game-changing steps that will take your Linux Mint to the next level. Yeah, I'll show you some advanced as well as actionable tweaks that will transform your computer. In just a few minutes, you'll learn how to speed up your system performance, boost your internet speed, maximize your laptop's battery life, and so much more. These steps are designed to make a real difference. Every time I install Linux Mint or any other Linux distro, I spend the first 15 minutes fine-tuning my system. It's a game changer, trust me. Linux is a powerhouse, and with the right tweaks, you can unlock its full potential. So let's dive in and supercharge your Linux Mint experience. Alright, before we do anything here, it's very important that we update the system. Even if you install a fresh system just now, there will be some patches and updates that we need to get. And while we're at it, let's also configure our system to use the fastest software servers. Open the menu and search for Update Manager, then click on it. Here you can see the welcome screen, which gives you a general idea of what you can do with the software updater. Read it and click on OK to proceed. Even if you don't see the screen, it's okay. Here, it will show you all the available updates. If prompted to switch to a local mirror, click Yes. You can keep it as it is by clicking on No or switch to a local mirror. If you don't see this banner but you want to switch to local mirrors, you can do it from the Software Sources option here. If you choose to use local mirrors, your system will download packages and updates from the closest and fastest mirrors. App download and system update speeds will be vastly improved. And it's going to save you a lot of time later on. You can change this anytime you want. We're going to click on Yes. Enter your password and click on Authenticate. We have two sets of servers. Here, the first one is for Linux Mint and the second one is for Ubuntu, which is the base of the system here. Just click on this and it's going to connect to all the Linux Mint servers worldwide and test their speeds. Give it a minute or two. Once it's done, select the topmost server with the highest speed and click on Apply. Then, do the same for the second option. You get most of your apps and updates from these servers. This can take 10 to 15 minutes as there are many Ubuntu servers that need to be tested. But you can select the topmost one after 10 minutes even if the test has not concluded. Then, you need to click here to update the app cache. Once it's done, close this window and click on Install Updates. Click on OK here, enter your password and hit Enter. Give it around 10-15 minutes to download and install the latest updates. Once it's done, restart your computer. If you face any issues with the new mirrors, you can use this button to restore the default server settings. Now, it's time to install optimized drivers for our hardware and improve the performance. Linux Mint doesn't automatically install proprietary GPU and Wi-Fi drivers like Ubuntu. However, it does provide a very convenient and simple driver manager that lets us do it with a single click. To access the driver manager, open up the menu and search for driver, then click on driver manager. While almost all the hardware drivers are included in the Linux kernel itself, some proprietary drivers like those for NVIDIA GPUs, certain Wi-Fi drivers, and some printers need to be manually installed, and they will be shown in the driver manager. We can see that this system is using an open source driver for my NVIDIA GPU. While this is fine, using the recommended proprietary driver will vastly improve the performance of my system. This performance difference is actually visibly huge. And if you want to do some gaming, the proprietary drivers are absolutely needed. So I'm going to select the recommended proprietary driver and click on Apply Changes. This will automatically download and install the latest recommended driver for my GPU. If you don't see any options here, that means all your devices are using the best drivers. Nothing more needs to be done. If you have more devices listed, such as Wi-Fi adapters and printers, select the recommended one for them and click on Apply Changes. Once the drivers are downloaded and installed, the system will ask you to reboot, so go ahead and restart your computer. Alright, let's extend the functionality of our Linux Mint and make it more awesome by installing some additional applications. Open up the software manager from the menu. I really like Linux Mint software manager. It's sleek, simple, but absolutely loaded. We can install software from the Ubuntu software repositories here, and we get Flatpaks. With both these repositories, you can install pretty much any software you want directly from this software manager. You'll find utilities, development tools and languages, office stuff, games and entertainment apps, and everything in between. You can also browse apps according to categories here. This lets you explore and discover new and exciting software. Only verified Flatpaks from FlatHub are shown here. This is a security feature, but it also means that many top Flatpaks like Spotify, Steam will not be available here. If you want to access those as well, just click here, open Preferences and turn this toggle on. Once you do that, you can install unverified Flatpaks as well, but you do get a red warning here. Let's go ahead and install VLC Media Player, GIMP for image editing, Kdenlive for video editing, and Gparted. You can switch between system packages, that is packages from Ubuntu software repositories, and Flatpaks using this drop-down. Alright, this one is my absolute favorite. Everybody has some applications that they use more than other applications. Your favorite browser, the IDE you use for development, and many more. Now, Preload is an intelligent daemon running in the background, observing your habits. It learns which apps you use frequently and keeps them primed and ready in memory before you even open them. Let's say you use Firefox browser a lot. When you click on the Firefox app icon, an ample amount of time is needed for the application to be read from the hard disk and loaded into memory. With Preload enabled, your computer already knows you use Firefox a lot, so it's already kept in the memory. Click on the icon and bam, there it is. Preload makes your computer very responsive. Just think about it. The computer will have to read and load the application from your hard disk when you click on the icon anyway. Why not do it beforehand itself? If you have 8 gigs or more RAM, Preload will do wonders for your app startup times. It's not magic, it's just very smart tech. But if you think about it, it's very simple. And the best part is, all you need to do is install it. Open a terminal and run sudo apt install preload. That's it. You don't have to do anything more. No configuration, no tuning up. Everything will be automatic. Just continue using your computer. Preload will learn from your usage patterns and adapt, constantly fine-tuning its performance. Your most used apps will become faster and more responsive over time, creating a personalized, turbocharged computing experience tailored just for you. Remember, only the apps you use the most and more frequently will become faster, not all apps. By the way, if you haven't already, check out my course Linux Mastery Express. I've designed this course to level up your Linux skills very quickly. With this course, you'll get so comfortable using the terminal commands that your friends will think you're a Linux wizard. You'll get perfect with the most used, most useful commands and also learn advanced things like using the V-editor and shell scripting as well. Linux Mastery Express, link in the description, do check. Now that we have set up our system, it's the perfect time to create our Keystone backup. This one step will save you hours of troubleshooting time and potential data loss and a lot of headache in the future. Remember, having a solid backup strategy isn't just recommended, it's essential. And there's no excuse for not having a backup. And Timeshift backup is something that every Linux user must have. Timeshift is a very powerful software. It has the capacity to restore your system from the worst of crashes and mess ups. It can even restore your operating system even if you completely delete your system. It's that powerful. And having this enables us Linux users to tinker under the hood and play with the inner workings of Linux without worrying about breaking the system. Now that we have our system set up, it's time to make a backup. Timeshift is already installed and integrated into the Linux Mint system. Let's go ahead and open it. You have two options in the backup type. Keep rsync checked and click on next. It'll estimate your system size. Then you'll be asked to choose the location to store your backup. You can choose any partition, even the partition you have installed the system. But I suggest you format a pen drive to ext4 and backup to that. That way, even if you literally format your entire hard drive and burn it, you can get back your system to this current state with Timeshift. I'm not kidding. Click next. Here you can set up automatic backups. You have various frequencies. Let's set up a monthly backup. That's enough, I think. We are backing up a completely set up system that has all the drivers and all the software we need. Click next here. On this page, click on create. This will create a backup of the system which you can roll back to any moment you want. I want to make it clear that Timeshift does not back up your personal files like your documents, photos and projects. It can if you want it to, but it's mainly a system backup tool. In case you break your operating system or any future update breaks your system, you can restore your system to this particular moment with Timeshift. It's a great tool and it has saved my system innumerable times. Now, it's time to supercharge your internet speed with an optimized DNS. When you type in a website URL and hit enter, you might have noticed that there's a very short gap before the actual website starts to load. During that time, the actual IP address of the website you requested will be getting resolved. This might take a short time or a long time based on the DNS that your internet provider is using for you by default. Now, you might have a very high-speed internet. We are not talking about the download or the upload speeds here. Simply put, we are talking about the time it takes to connect to a website. And this can be improved significantly by changing the DNS. We are talking stellar, noticeable improvements here. Let's get into it. Click on the connected Wi-Fi icon here. Click on network settings. Click on the gear icon of the Wi-Fi you use here. In the IPv4 section, turn off the automatic toggle. In this text box, paste the numbers from the description below. Click the add button and paste the second one as well. Click on apply. Then we do the same for IPv6 section. We are going to use Google DNS, which is really good. It's reliable and resolves IP addresses very fast. I've used many custom DNS and Google and Cloudflare DNS tend to work the best. I prefer the Google one. Apply the settings, turn off the Wi-Fi and turn it back on. Enjoy a faster internet. Linux Mint looks gorgeous out of the box as it is. But there are many cool options given here to amp up the looks. Open up the themes application from the menu here. We have 3 styles available. Changing this affects how applications, the bottom panel and the menu look. Mint X is the old Linux Mint theme, while Mint Y is the newest. You can switch between dark and light themes here. The mixed
Due to time, I'm going to interrupt this one. I'm hoping to get to at least one of the other ones that... This is another optimized one. This one's an hour and a half long. Customize the cinnamon playing on Linux Mint. It can allow you, give you the necessary knowledge to really customize your desktop look. Still.
Greetings and welcome to another thrilling episode of Veronica Explains. I'm Veronica, and today I'd like to take a moment and do a little bit of an off-the-cuff episode, a sort of ode to the terminal and why I think the terminal is amazing and is still worth learning even here in 2022 and beyond. The idea for this video came about because I ended up in a little bit of a debate with somebody offline, not anybody you know, not a YouTuber, whether or not the terminal is, and I think I'm quoting here, something to be overcome. Now, this individual was arguing that the terminal is something to be overcome in that we should strive to get rid of terminal-based applications entirely. And I just simply disagree with that. And I'm betting you do too, since you're watching this video. But I wanted to go into a little bit about why I think the terminal is awesome and why I think it really deserves love and respect from the Linux community and the computing community at whole. Because let's not forget, there's a terminal on Windows. There's a terminal in the Mac. There's a terminal in FreeBSD. It's important to learn the terminal, and let's get into why. Reason number one why I think the terminal is awesome is efficiency. Terminal applications just simply are more efficient. They just take up less resources to run. And that helps your equipment last longer. That helps you skip an upgrade cycle or two in terms of your hardware, which generates less e-waste, and that's important. But honestly, it's just nice to know that you're leaving headroom on your machine for other tasks. You know, giving your computer less to do tends to be a good thing. Next on my list is standardization. Terminal-based applications tend to be standardized from distro to distro, or even beyond Linux. You know, Vim is the same virtually. Doesn't matter if you're running Linux or FreeBSD or Mac OS or any number of things. It's the same process from computer to computer, and that level of interoperability is something typically challenging to do in a graphical application, so a lot of graphical applications just don't do it. That's where I think the terminal has some of its greatest strength. You know, let's take apt as an example. Now, apt isn't available everywhere Linux is sold, but on the Debian-based distros that ship apt, it doesn't really matter if you're on Mint, Ubuntu, Pop, any number of things. If you learn apt in one place, you tend to know how to use it in the other places. And that's a good thing. And let's not forget that many applications are available in almost any Unix-like system. Top comes to mind. It's a wonderful application that you're gonna find almost everywhere. And so if you learn how to use it in one place, chances are you can get around with that in a variety of different places. And that's a fantastic thing. Another advantage to apps in the terminal, they work almost anywhere. For real, because most of my workflow is actually in the terminal, I'm able to work from virtually anywhere, including with my e-ink reader through the magic of SSH. It's pretty neat. Next, we've got to talk about config files. Now, I know some people think that text-based configuration files are a bit of a nuisance, that they're challenging to work with because there's different syntaxes from program to program, and that's convoluted or messy. But I would argue that having things in a simple to edit and simple to backup text file makes Linux and the associated systems much easier to configure and reconfigure and port configurations from one place to the next. You know, my Vim RC works whether or not I'm on Linux or FreeBSD or a Mac. If I need to do something on a server, I can copy my Vim RC right from a Git repo, and suddenly I feel right at home. Doing that on a lot of graphical programs is either impossible or a real headache. And this is one area where I think the terminal just makes a ton of sense. Next on my list is speed. And this is something where I don't think there's any sort of contest here. Doing things in the terminal tends to be significantly faster than if you try to do them using graphical programs. I can't help but think of just finding files on your computer. If I'm looking for a configuration file, finding it using the terminal is often significantly faster than trying to click through and find it in a file manager. That's really important if you're trying to get work done quickly. Another example that comes to mind is rsync. If I need to copy files from one computer to another computer, graphically, it's kind of a challenge. It's possible to do, you can mount a shared folder from one place to the next and that, or you can just use rsync and do it really quickly. With rsync, you get extra benefits too, like keeping two directories on different computers in sync with a cron job or with a schedule. That's something that's really hard to do with graphical programs. It's possible. It's gonna be more challenging to do that with a graphical program. The terminal makes it easy. Another thing that I love about the terminal, and this is a bit of a soft spot for me, is it's just Linuxy. I know that some folks, when they're trying to sell Linux to newcomers, say things like, you don't need the terminal anymore, or you don't need the terminal as much anymore. And that's true to a certain extent. I think we do a disservice to people when we don't just come out and say, you'll still need the terminal a little bit. For some stuff, the terminal is easier. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not for everybody, but we can work to make it for everybody. We can work to make it easier for everybody. And learning a little bit of the terminal, no matter what system you're on, can help you understand just a little bit more about how it works and how it can work. And that's fantastic. Another thing we need to talk about is bash scripting. It will change your life. Let's say, as an example, you have 700 files and you need to prepend a date onto every single file in that directory. Doing this graphically is gonna take you a really long time. Doing it in the terminal with a script can be seconds. And that's amazing. In my mind, this is the killer feature of the terminal. You can build fantastic tools with scripts. The last thing I want to talk about is something that's, it's a bit personal from person to person. This is the case for me, might not be the case for you, and that's okay. Using the terminal and terminal-based applications frees my mind up to focus less on the tool and more on the work. And that's important. Sometimes a screwdriver is a better tool than a power drill. And often with me, this is just me, I can't speak for you, but often with me, that's how I feel trying to do something graphically when I know how to do it in the terminal. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with admitting it. There's nothing wrong with celebrating it. It's wonderful. I wanted to take the time, just a minute out of my day, to really celebrate the terminal and just talk about how amazing it really is. I've got a lot of other videos I'm working on, some terminal stuff, some not terminal stuff. I just think it's important that we appreciate the fantastic tools that we have, like the terminal. Because the terminal, like Linux, is awesome. And so are you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, on that one. I'm going to do one more because it's already past 9 o'clock. And most of the rest of these are in the same vein. They're also by all Veronica, believe it or not. And this one and several other ones, I learned something I didn't know existed in Linux, and I've taken some classes. And at the same time, too, there are some things that I didn't understand what the tool did and how it did it. And I've got several here. So I'm strongly recommending when I hand out the list that you go through all these before the next meeting. You have the opportunity to learn a lot. I wouldn't sit down and do all of them at one shot. You'll fall asleep long before you get very far. I would take maybe 2 a day at most when you've got time, and then practice what she's actually showing you and trying to teach you in the videos.
How frustrating is it when you're working with a Linux command and the output is a messy wall of text? I mean, sure, we might be able to grep our way into finding what we need, but what if we just want to clear up the output a little bit? Well, here's an option you might not know about: the column command. Greetings and welcome to another exciting Little Linux lesson. I'm Veronica, and today we're going to talk about the column command. Column is an incredibly easy tool to collimate lists. Collimate, is that how I say that? And while it's not as fully featured as awk, which is a whole language in its own right, column is a great tool to keep handy when you're dealing on the fly with clearing up a bunch of disorganized output. For instance, here I have a list of packages overdue for update on a test server. Now, the file list is alphabetically organized, which is nice enough, but it's kind of annoying to have to page or scroll through all of this output. But if I pipe that output into the column command, it spits each line into a new column. Now it's much easier for me to visually walk through this list. By default, the column command fills the column before filling the row. But if you pass column the -x option, now the rows are filled before the columns. The column command will take standard input, such as the piping that I've been doing, but it can also pass a file name as a parameter. So here, for example, we can drop the piping and just type column, and then a space, and then the file name. That said, you're probably going to be using this more with piped standard input. So for the rest of this video, that's what I'm focusing on. A more practical example would be piping the results of a typical utility such as find. Let's say I wanted to know what OpenType fonts I had installed on my system. I'd start by navigating to /user/share/fonts with the cd command, and then use the find command to list out all the OTF files. Now, I know I don't have to explain how CD and find work because I totally made videos about those already, and I'm sure you took the time to watch them. The output of the find command is another long list here. But if I pipe it into column, it's much cleaner and easier to see. Now, for most casual uses, this is probably all you're ever going to do with the column command. That said, where column can really shine is when used with the -t option, which unlocks table mode, giving you a ton of options for working with more complex data. Take the /etc/password file as an example. When I cat out this file, you'll see it's an ugly mess. Ugh. Now, again, we might use grep if we know exactly what information we're after here, and that's great. But what if we don't know exactly what we're after? There have been plenty of times as an admin where I've had to take over someone else's setup. And column is an indispensable tool at helping make complicated output like this a bit more discoverable. So let's pipe /etc/password into column, passing it the -t option for table mode. We'll also have to specify a delimiter, which the column command refers to as a separator. And this will tell column what parts of the text to break into separate fields. We do that with the -s option followed by the delimiter in quotes. For /Etsy/password, we use a colon as the delimiter, so that's what we're going to pass. I don't know about you, but I think that looks a lot neater. We can make it even prettier with column headers. Column headers are specified with the -n option, with the n as uppercase. Then we pass a comma-separated list of headers. In this case, username, PW for password, and yes, they used to store the password here, UID for user ID, GUID for group ID, a comment field, a home directory field, and the interpreter used on login, if applicable. When I scroll to the top of this neat output, I can see a very nice, neat-looking set of columns. And now that it's in a neat table with these neat headers, there's more neat stuff we can do. Can you tell I remember the -n option as the neat option? See, once we add the -n option to name each column, we can use additional options to act on specific columns in the table. Let's say we want to hide that outdated password column. Well, with -h, with the H as uppercase, we can do that. Just add the PW column name after the option to hide it from view. And if we want to reorder these columns, we can do that with the -o option, with the O as uppercase. Just rewrite the column names after the -o option in the order you want to see them in. And of course, there's a bunch of other options for manipulating the specific columns. And as always, the man page is your friend. But before I go, I want to talk about one other kind of important option, and that's JSON output. Let's say you have a bunch of data in one format that you need to put into JSON for another system to ingest. I dealt with this while helping customers migrate data out from COBOL systems into web-based applications. Well, if you can iterate through your data using the column command, turning it into a pretty-looking table, you can also output it in JSON format with the -j flag, with the J being uppercase. You'll probably want to name the table though, and you can do that easily with the -n option, with the n being lowercase. Then after that, just type the name of the table. When the command runs, it outputs clean, machine-friendly JSON. And now you can look like a hero the next time someone needs some JSON from a system that only outputs a CSV. Anyway, that's really it for the column command. Column is part of the util/Linux package and is packaged for BSD, so chances are it's on your system already or can easily be installed. And yes, there's more you can do with the column command that I didn't cover in this video. But in my opinion, if you need more than some basic formatting or on-the-fly conversion, I'd really recommend learning something a little bit more robust, like awk. In fact, maybe I should just plan an awk for absolute beginners.
I stopped it because of the late hour. But most of the rest of the videos are of this nature that I came across, and I think everybody needs to look at them. I don't know all the stuff. I picked up a lot of things just from these various videos with her, and I got more to come. So I suggest going through them. And in addition, the image I have on my Linux box is nice, crisp, clean, readable. I don't know what's going on with that video going up to Zoom and coming back down to everybody else. But if the video I'm making is like this, I'm not very happy with it right now. But I think it's an internet thing. At least so far it seems to be. But I may be absolutely wrong about that. One of the...
Tim, where is the list going to be for all the sites?
Pardon?
Where is the list for all the sites? going to be put up?
I haven't given it to you yet.
I know that. Where? Is it going to be in chat?
I haven't created it yet.
Okay, then when?
Next century. Okay, you should be starting to see it.
Actually, no, not yet.
It shows that it went out on my end. That's why I say I think we got an internet problem this evening that I can't explain. Have you got it in it yet?
Yeah, I got it.
Chat.
No,
Yeah, I downloaded it already.
I've got nothing.
I wonder what the hell's going on.
It's not showing up.
Well, the only thing I can do is try sending it again, but I don't think it's going to make a damn bit of difference.
Well,
Oh, this is interesting. When I got it and I downloaded it on my Chromebook, but on my Linux machine, it never showed up. It's not there.
I just sent it again. It's only 7K bytes in size.
yeah, it's not showing up.
No.
Yeah, I
Well,
got it. I got it twice in the Chromebook, but not once in my Linux box. That's strange.
I
Because
agree.
I got the same internet. I mean,
Now, this hasn't happened before, but something's going on. I can't explain it, but in general, this is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. Another thing I'm now noticing, uh, I don't know if you guys see it, but I'm in two images. One of them is from Dennis's, I guess, Linux box, and I'm skewed to one side, so to speak. It's very strange looking image. And I don't know if that's the internet or
no, only because the camera is kind of shoved to the side. If I kind of
okay.
straighten it out here, then it's better. Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis is showing an image of a screen.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not taken from a straight on angle.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from the side. Yeah.
Well, the only other thing I can do is I'll have to send it as an attachment in an email.
That may be the only thing to do at this point.
Are you able to send anything through chat, Bob? Message through chat?
Oh, you want me to try again?
I mean, sending a message through chat.
Just a minute. I'm going to go to you one more and go over to my desktop, and I have something on the GUVC view controls. Pete is able to send a message. Let me see. File.
I'm gonna try to
All
send
right,
a message to Bob.
file. And I'm going to go.
Hmm.
to my desktop, and I'm going to do that. Open, upload, and I'm going to send this to see if everybody gets it. Yeah, that uploaded.
Yeah,
Now
I got
an actual. This is not a formatted document.
yeah, I got that on my
Yeah,
Linux and on my Chromebook both.
Yeah, I got it too, as far as that goes. But what's going on here? I have no idea. All it is an RTF file like I normally make.
Really bizarre. I'm sorry, Bob. Did you say you sent that from your Linux box or a?
Yeah, it was from my my Mint desktop,
Hmm.
and that's
it's
perfectly fine.
formatted.
And I'm sending this via
It's text.
uh,
Mine's
the,
a text file.
and I'm sending mine through the Linux box. I can try seeing if I can do it through Windows.
Let me try
The
something
main
else.
system is Windows Desktop.
If you're doing it through chat, Tim, can you send it specifically to Bob only instead of
Technically,
everybody?
yes, but I send to everybody.
But I mean, could you try sending it just to Bob and see what happens?
Okay, now I have this formatted, and I'm not going to do a collision
Hang,
with.
hang on a minute. I may have just found what caused the problem and why Dennis on the Chromebook has the only one. I didn't send to everybody.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I had to change it because I sent a message
All
to
right.
him that he lost his system.
Oh
This is an
yeah.
Office ODT formatted text, and that also worked. And I Zoom sees it as Word, but it's Open Office ODT. I it's LibreOffice. It's LibreOffice Writer.
I sent it again, but to everybody.
Okay, I got it.
I did too.
Okay. Well, that's the thing. I had to send Dennis a message during the meeting while Bob was talking, and that he lost his Linux system again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't notice it when I tried to send the document that it was
Yep.
still set to Dennis.
Okay, yeah, this time it's up and it's good.
Okay. Well, that's a
And
relief.
various commands and bottles, fuser. Believe it or not, I actually recognize some of these.
That's impossible.
Exec, I know. All right. Cool stuff. I'll have to look at it.
I got it too.
Yep. Everybody got it this time.
Okay.
I got it. I got it 5 times.
User error.
Good. Then you'll have to watch these 5 times, Dennis.
No, Dennis has got to do them 10 times each and exercise each version of watching it, do the actual commands 10 times each.